Hanging out to the geeks. We're back, of course, with our awesome guest Nasser.
What's going on? I feel like I haven't seen you in a long time.
Hey, we've been recuperating here with the holiday and the show just passing,
Hmm.
which was an awesome show, by the way.
Thank you.
Of course, before we get started, we've got a guest today, um, James Robinson. If you don't know who he is, he co-created Starman. He worked on Stargirl. He worked for DC, and created worked on a number of characters. He worked on the League of the Extraordinary Gentlemen, the movie.
Mhm.
Um, and for comic wise, I mean, the list goes on. I mean, Dark Knight, Batman, the Legend. He wrote. If you were back in the day and read Dark Horse, the Terminator stuff, he wrote on that too.
And a
There's a
bunch of
number.
yeah, a bunch
Go
of
ahead.
current series that are coming out from Dark Horse.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
we're gonna talk about that. What he's currently
Yeah.
working on. And before we do that, we're gonna give a quick shout out to Dragons Lair Alamo Ranch. This is a place if you want to go and play D&D, Warhammer, Magic, Pokemon. This is where you want to go. If you want to sign up for a subscription box, or just pre-order a graphic novel, or pre-order variant covers, you want to come here. And of course, the show just passed, but this is the logo for Nasser's show. Next year we're gonna be figuring out what's gonna be the next plan, Nasser, because it was such an awesome show.
Yeah, definitely. And we've already announced the dates. Anyone that follows us on Facebook or Instagram, it's going to be November 14th, 2026. And I'm working on guest lists and all that kind of stuff. But like you said, we just finished that show. So all of that news will be coming later on.
All right, let's get James in the room. James,
Hello. Hello, one
thank
and all.
you. How
How
have
you
you been,
doing?
man?
Good. I actually forgot. I had something come up, and I had a slight brain fart, and I forgot about this. So I haven't combed my hair, so I look a bit crazy right now. But there you go.
That's okay because that's why I wore a cap because I need to
Oh,
cut my
okay,
hair.
yeah.
Yeah.
So what we are here for, we talk to creators and comic book artists to talk about how they got into the industry and the stuff they've worked on and the stuff that they're
Yeah.
gonna currently be working on. Yours goes far back, and you worked on some great titles. And I want people to know, like, where did you? Well, I'm sorry. What age did you know? Hey, this is what I want to do.
It was. I was about. What was I? 22, I think.
Oh wow.
And what had happened? I mean, I'd always been a comic fan. Like comics were the reason I learned to read. I taught myself to read when I was like 4, so I wouldn't have to have anyone read comics to me. I could read it myself. And I'd always loved comics. And comics were sort of becoming. Comics went through a period where they sort of began to mature, and that was with the advent of sort of Alan Moore and Frank Miller, Howard Chaykin, Wagner, um, 2000 AD to a degree, and all of that. So in England, especially, comics were kind of cool. There were girls. There were you could be a comic fan and have a girlfriend back then. But this is back when that sort of thing never happened. So I was that was sort of the world I was a part of. But I went to film school. I got a degree in filmmaking, and I assumed I was going to be acknowledged as a genius overnight and become the next Orson Welles, and that didn't happen. So in the interim, when I was looking for a gig and everything else, I got a job working at Titan Books, which at the time was a company that mainly did reprints of 2000 AD, and I worked there in various capacities over about 8 months. I became the editor of the line after 8 months.
Oh wow.
I kind of just it was a very easy ascent for me because people were quitting and there were people that weren't very good at what they were doing, etc. So while that was happening, Titan Books in conjunction with another company called Escape Magazine decided to do their first original graphic novel, and that was Neil Gaiman's Violent Cases, which is with Dave McKean, which has been reprinted and all of that. And so Neil would come in and flounce about and show his book off and all that. And I remember thinking to myself, man, I can do this. I can do what this guy does. So I went off and decided I was going to write a graphic novel. and I was lucky enough to two things I was very lucky at. One was I found an artist. I realized I needed an artist. I found this guy Paul Johnson, who did this book London's Dark with me, and he went on to do one of the books of magic, one of the issues of that, and some other stuff. He actually has quit comics now. Interestingly, he's a massage therapist. But you know, there you go.
Oh wow.
People's lives change. So the other thing that where I was very lucky was that everybody thinks they can write. Like everybody, you know, if you can write a letter to your mom or a shopping list or whatever, everybody thinks that they can write. It's an easy thing to assume. You know, not everybody thinks they can be a cinematographer or a director or even, you know, a car detailer. You know, they understand that there's specific jobs with specific set of skills, to paraphrase Liam Neeson. And so I just decided I was going to write. Now, in film school and prior to that, I had never written. And even at film school, I was studying. I really was more interested in directing and cinematography and the technical side of film. So other guys wrote the scripts that we worked on, that I worked on. So, but when I began to write, I happened to be able to write, and it was an innate talent. And I think writers do have an innate talent. I think classes and workshops and all of that stuff can help you become a better writer, and you know, and maybe it will teach you things that you should be doing or things you shouldn't be doing with your own writing. But you have to have that innate creativity, I think. Mm-hmm. So I was lucky, and I wrote London's Dark, and that got me to the attention. It was a photocopy. I had a photocopied version prior to being published, and it was that year at UCAC, which is UK Art Convention, Comic Art. I don't know what it stands for, but Comic Art Convention, UCAC, yeah. So it was there that Matt Wagner was there, and so was Archie Goodwin.
Oh wow!
Archie Goodwin was at Marvel at the time, and Matt Wagner was doing Grendel for a company called Comico. And he at the time, if you know anything about the book Grendel, he did a run of 40 issues, and then he stopped, and he was going to take a break and then do War Child. So he said, he was impressed enough with my work. He said, would you like to take over and do a series while my break before I do War Child? So that's when I wrote Four Devils, One Hell at the time for Comico. And there's a little interesting sidebar I'll get to in a minute. But then Comico went bankrupt, mm-hmm. and eventually Dark Horse took over Matt Wagner's work and Grendel. But it was a couple of years later, and Matt said, look, I can't relaunch Grendel with you. I need to be the one to relaunch Grendel. So we're going to do War Child first, and then we'll do your series. So this was actually a few years later. I'd begun to do other things and for various smaller companies after London's Dark, and then at the same time, Dinah Schutz, who was editing Grendel, had been editing on Comico and then went on to work at Dark Horse. She got me Terminator and some other stuff at Dark Horse, so I began to work there. Archie was at Epic at the time, but he was feeling frustrated by the fact that the people at Marvel at that time did not respect Epic, did not think highly of arty books. They wanted to do, you know, I mean, there's the famous quote that Sleepwalker is Sandman done right, you know, which is ridiculous. But I think it was Tom DeFalco said that, actually. I hope I'm not dropping him in trouble. But the point is that was the sort of mindset at the time. Yeah. So Archie was frustrated, and he eventually quit and went to DC. And very quickly, honestly, within the first week, he was like, hey, I'm at DC now. Let's finally get something done. So that's when he hired me to do Golden Age. And while Paul was doing the artwork, he was like, hey, you know, how are you making money? And I'm like, well, I'm, you know, trying to find bits of work here and there. He says, well, I'm editing Legends of the Dark Knight. So why don't you do Legends of the Dark Knight? And wow. I had, and when you're friends with Matt Wagner, there's kind of a Grendel world of Matt Wagner, of other creators that you kind of meet and you all just hang out at conventions and stuff. So long before that, I had met and made friends with Tim Sale. So second interesting sidebar was that at the time at DC, it was sort of governed by fiefdoms in that Mike Carlin was in charge of all the Superman books. Denny O'Neil was in charge of the Batman books.
Mm-hmm.
I forget who was in charge of like Justice League and that stuff. And Archie was was given like just find cool stuff to do. And because Legends of the Dark Knight was out of continuity, they also gave him that book, although Denny O'Neil had a little bit of authority over it. So Denny O'Neil saw Tim Sale's art and said, "There is no way that Tim Sale should do Batman. He's a terrible choice as a Batman artist."
Wow.
And Archie, who was he was known as and was the nicest man in comics, but he was a tenacious pit bull when he wanted something to achieve something. So he pushed and pushed, and he got Tim Sale accepted. So, and that was how Tim Sale did his first Batman stuff before Long Halloween or any of that stuff.
Wow.
So that's where I started, and I was doing, I began at DC, and I got a good reputation there. I did a little bit of work at Marvel at the time. Another sidebar, though, I'll say, is that because I had done those, I had written like 3 or 4 issues of Grendel at Comico. There were 2.5 issues of art done by Philip Bond. I don't know if you know who Philip Bond is. He's a British artist that Kill Your Girlfriend, did stuff at Deadline, helped to launch Deadline.
Yeah, big fan of Philip and his wife Shelley.
Okay, yeah. So apparently that artwork is somewhere in a storage facility in England.
Wow.
And I've always thought that like a fantastic volume would be my Grendel Tales for Devil's One Hell, which was all done by Teddy Christensen. Brilliant art, painted beautifully, but very different from Philip Bond. And just seeing how 2 equally talented artists, but with very different artistic styles and ways of interpreting a comic book script, would interpret the same script. It's probably been done somewhere, but I've always thought it would be an interesting, addition.
Yeah,
anyway, I was working away, and then just by chance, at the same time I was in England when I was getting my degree and wrote London's Dark. But a friend of mine, Mike Lake, a very great friend, who actually was in charge of Titan Distributors. So he was within that comic book world. He was opening a comic book store in LA, and he wanted me to, because he just trusted me to come out and just sort of look over the store's launch for a few months, while I was waiting to start Grendel Tales, because there was cash flow and they couldn't afford to pay me right away. So I came out to Sherman Oaks in California, and I was co-managing this store for a few months. And it ultimately, for one reason or another, I stayed in California, and I've never left America.
Oh.
And that's how it all began.
So it just goes from a photocopied version of your graphic novel to all of a sudden you're in the industry. That's
well, when you're trying to make this a long, boring story as quick as possible, it sounds like it happened overnight, but it really didn't. I actually was constantly getting jobs, being paid for them, and then they weren't being published. There was a comic book, a magazine called, what was it called? I don't remember now, but it was noteworthy because it had a Dan Dare series by Grant Morrison and Ryan. God, I'm forgetting everyone's name. Ryan. What's his name? Hang on a sec.
That's crazy.
Where is it?
So that's one of those.
Ryan Hughes.
Oh, okay.
And I forget the name of the series now, but I was hired to do 2 graphic novels in 19. So this series, the magazine was all graphic novels broken down into chapters, and then at the end of it they would collect the graphic novel.
Mhm.
Wow.
And so they did a couple, and then they went bust. But they'd already paid me to write these 96-page graphic novels. One was called The Big Ice, and it was like a sci-fi mystery in the Antarctic. And the other one was called Mystery Tour, and it was sort of a mystery in LA with this kid on holiday and falls in love and they get in danger.
Yeah.
And one was drawn by Steve Yoel, and the other was drawn by Tony Salmons, and they both did about 8-10 pages of artwork. And then the whole thing was cancelled, but I got paid, so I was working, as I'm saying, but nothing was getting published. And then I did. You remember Classics Illustrated? There was
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
some great stuff. So I was
Wow.
hired to do a Goethe's Faust. Do you know the myth of Faust? The guy sells his soul to the devil and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And it was going to be drawn by originally Bernie Moreau, who's another Matt Wagner guy, and then he couldn't do it, so it became drawn by the Panda Brothers, who were also Grendel Matt Wagner guys, and they didn't draw it, but I wrote that entire thing, so that never got published because
Dang.
First Comics went bankrupt or some reason. So there's all
Do you
this.
still have all these scripts, James, or are they
I do.
gone?
Well, it's actually funny because I'm actually going to launch a website, hopefully by the end of December, so like beginning of January. But it's just, I don't know how much you guys have done with websites, but just there's all these things you got to think about, and then you've got to have content. So one of the things I was going to do was put a lot of the stuff of mine that never got published into on the website so people could see it. Like another example, I did when I first. Oh, I guess of that same. I guess for me, very eventful UCAC. Matt Wagner, Archie Goodwin, but I also made friends with an artist called Mark Badger. And I happened to go to New York and crash with him. And he took me up to Marvel when Mark Waid was editing Secret Origins.
Wow.
Okay.
So he gave me, and he just met me and trusted me, Mark, and he gave me the Secret Origin of Dinosaur Island, which was penciled completely by Tim Burgard, who was he's a guy that mainly does storyboards. I mean, he's still working in storyboards. He's a pretty big deal in storyboards. But he was sort of doing a little bit of comic books work back then. This is like early 90s. I mean, like 1990 or 1989. And so I wrote the whole script. It was for Secret Origins, so it was only 10 pages. And he drew it all. And then when they moved from the address that was 666, whatever street it was on, I forget, and they moved to Avenue of the Americas, where they were for, until they moved to LA, DC Comics, the artwork got stolen or lost.
Oh.
So it was gone, but I was looking through my files. I looked over my shoulder because my files were through that door. And I found the pencils. So I'm going to put that up as a thing, just out of interest. And there's other things that have come and, you brought up League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. And that was a script.
Do you have your original script the way it was supposed to be?
Yes, exactly. It was all set in like the five points of New York at the turn of the century. It wasn't all the movie that it became.
Yeah.
So I was thinking of putting all that stuff on, and then everybody can read it and enjoy it.
Yeah, people would love that because not only to read what you wrote, but also I'm sure there's a lot of aspiring comic artists that would love to see how you format your comic scripts. So coming from the film world, do you write them like screenplays?
No, well, remember, not really, because as I said, when I was at film school, I was not writing scripts. So I was trying to, at the time I first started, there wasn't really a format. But I hope I can find this somewhere. If I find it, when I did my first story for Dinah Schutz, the first issue of Grendel Tales, and I wrote it, and it wasn't formatted right and everything else. And Diana, who did that. She did that nice with Tim Sale, actually, all these same people. She did a kind of Grendel spin-off series, a little 3-parter with the girl that was in the Hunter Rose stuff. So she definitely knew how to write a script. She wrote a script for me. It was like 3 pages, and it was me going into her office I was in the script, and she was in the script, and it was me
Oh,
going
wow.
into her office and her having, explaining how you format a script and what it looks like. But she was actually doing the script that way as she was in this thing. I hope I still have it. And then at the same time, Archie, he didn't do it like that, but he showed me his scripts, and he his was very similar, and so that's how I learned to format. And I've always done my scripts the same way. And I remember this writer that I worked with, cocky young guy, and he was sort of like gently making. He thought he knew it all because he was young, full of piss and vinegar. And he was mocking the fact that I did capital. I always do caps for panel descriptions, and then lowercase, and caps for the identifier of who's speaking in the dialogue.
Oh, wow.
But then the dialogue
Yeah.
is lowercase. And he's like, well, it looks like you're yelling all the time, and da da da. And I was like, well, firstly, I was like, well, I was taught this by Dinah Schutz and Archie Goodwin, so go F yourself. But more importantly, the reason is that there are artists that like it that way, because they can more easily identify the dialogue for scripting, for working out word balloons and stuff like that. And then, of course, the panel descriptions are clean and precise because they're all caps. Wow. So anyway, that was how I started. But no, I in answer to your question, I didn't do it. I didn't use a film script format first.
And how verbose are your scripts in between Alan Moore and Marvel style? Where do you fall on that scale?
Well, it used to see. Obviously, I literally when I was coming in, Alan Moore was the guy, and his scripts were just ridiculously detailed. So he in fact all these same names, all these same people. Mike Late was at his place years ago, and he was getting up in the morning to go to work, Alan Moore, and he rolled this gigantic spliff, and Mike Late thought, oh, we're all going to have a morning smoke, and Alan Moore just took this thing upstairs, and I guess he was writing all day and smoking all day. So when you're stoned, you can go down one path or another creatively. So that's some of those descriptions are crazy. Where a tiny panel that another writer would have taken a sentence to describe.
Wow,
but at the time he was a king. So when I was younger, I thought you had to be verbose. If Alan Moore is verbose, I'm verbose. So I would get pretty detailed about stupid stuff that didn't matter. But then as I got older, you also learn to trust. I mean, I do very detailed scripts still, and I love the internet because now I can get all the reference I need. I put so many pictures, like photos and reference, and artists that have talked about me online and stuff have remarked that they enjoy the fact that I take the time to give them reference, because some writers I know, just throw all this hard stuff to draw at an artist and don't give them any help. So I've always I am detailed, but as you get older, as you get not older but more experienced, you begin to realize what a specific artist needs. Some artists don't need very much at all. Some True. Artists, like I work with Darwin Cook, he doesn't need anything, Yeah. And then you have other artists that are either new or, there are also artists, and they're great. They can be great. I can think of a couple that are like legendary artists, but what they're good at is drawing what they're told to draw. They don't kind of like extrapolate from that and bring anything new. So, and there are others who extrapolate like crazy, and the thing is very, very much an amalgam of the writer and the artist. So you kind of get to know a little bit, one way or the other, what is required of you with the story. And also, if you're working with a one-off artist, it's one thing, but when you have a long relationship with the artist and you work with them over and over and over, you start to cut back on how much because you know what they need, So and it's very much a case of every collaboration with an artist is different. It's never the
Dang.
same.
So that actually brings me to Starman, which was one of my all-time favorite comic series, and thank you so much for your work on that.
Well, thank you
But your
for asking me.
collaboration, yeah,
Yeah.
and just preparing for this interview, I just reread your whole run, so
Wow.
I've got it all fresh in my mind. So that collaboration with Tony Harris, where he's doing just those amazing panel layouts and those backgrounds on the page and stuff, was that something that just came from Tony, or are you giving him any kind of direction on that?
Well, I gave her a lot of. This is the thing about. This is what I think about scripts. Is that I would rather. Sorry,
Mm-hmm.
I would rather have too many ideas in the script and some get filtered out than not having enough.
Dang.
And so I would give him scripts, but Tony has always been, even when he was still kind of learning, I mean, there's something you probably didn't notice when you read those scripts, but if you look back at the first like 4, 5, 6 issues that he did,
Mm-hmm.
he didn't know how to draw feet, so he would cut everybody off at the ankle, which.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go back and look at that.
So and then he slowly got to. I think by the first talking with David, he was doing feet,
Okay.
but he was sort of learning as he went. He'd only done like 2 issues of Nightbreed, a Clive Barker book, before Starman, so it was a learning curve. But he's always been a free spirit and an independent mind. So some of the stuff was stuff that I suggested, but often it would go off in different directions from time to time, and it's fine. I mean, that's a good collaboration.
Yeah.
Wow. That's freaking awesome. I mean, going from that and creating the other, transitioning from writing Starman and then getting to work in film again, and you've got to write some movies. And one of the movies that, of course, I wanted to talk to you about was this movie. I feel was ahead of its time. The story of it was great. I love the premise of you have a person who passes away and you have 2 comic book shops, which is hilarious because it reminds me of 2 comic book shops here in San Antonio.
Yes.
One is all fancy looking and owned by a husband and wife, and then the other one is owned by a geek and fan who's owning his shop, and it's just, and you have the way you wrote it by having these characters that were in it. It reminds me of an actual shop where fans come in and they come in to talk to you and talk about what they're picked up that week, and they talk about the stories, and it's kind of a place to congregate. And
Yeah.
the story in general, I'll bring this up, a photo of it. Comic book villains. This movie had a freaking awesome cast of actors that eventually had gone on to be in
Yes.
numerous movies. How much of an involvement did you have on that cast as well?
Oh, everything. That was all. I mean, So the story of that was I wrote the script. I had this idea, and it is based on a number of things. I very much love Ealing comedies, which are British comedies from a certain film studio. And probably my favorite one is The Lady Killers with Alec Guinness, and it's so darkly. It just the escalation of stuff is so dark but so funny at the same time.
Yeah.
And there's also another movie that was an inspiration, which is The Treasure of the Sierra Madre, which is a movie about with Humphrey Bogart, Tim Holt, and Walter Houston, who was the first Houston before all the other Houstons that followed. And and it's these 3 prospectors, and they discover gold, and slowly the treasure. It doesn't drive them all crazy, but it drives Humphrey Bogart crazy. The greed and the wanting of it. And so the thing about collecting is, and I was digging into my own psyche. I mean, I have a gigantic Viewmaster collection, and I have books and all sorts of stuff. My wife collects stuff too. that you have to be careful that you still live your life. You still go out and meet people and interact, and you still have to. And I had to like really recalibrate myself to do that when I was younger. And if you're single, try and meet women, and or men, and live a full life, not just become obsessive about that one thing that you collect.
Yeah.
So that was that, and that is the message of the movie. So I wrote that, but I wanted it to be funny, and I was very inspired. At the time, they couldn't really take a step wrong. They've kind of done a few movies I'm not too crazy about now, but the Coen brothers back then were brilliant. I mean, they are brilliant. They're just brilliant. But they were just so every film was great, and it was different and everything else. But they all have that sort of weirdly black. There's a black, apart from Miller's Crossing, which is just a great movie, but it's not very funny. But everything else has that off kilter dark humor to it.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to kind of like try and do a movie like that. And I mean, I got it made. But originally, when Lionsgate, I mean, it went through so many ups and downs, and then casting. When you do an independent movie, often everyone goes, well, if you get Nicolas Cage, you get so and so, we'll make the movie. But everybody says that. So the way that a lot of these movies get put together is, and there really, at least back then, there was this sort of mathematical formula where they go, well, so and so's worth, $500,000 or 200,000 in Czechoslovakia, and this one's worth such and such in Spain, and over in Australia he's worth, and it's a math formula that they then work out how much of a budget they think they can risk on this movie.
Wow.
So I wanted Donald Logue. I've loved Donald Logue since he was playing remember the cab driver, the sleazy kind of sweaty cab driver in the MTV little video shorts he'd do.
Yes, I remember
way
now.
back in the
Yeah.
day. And then he did the Tower of Steve, which was the movie that kind of got him a bit more of a name. It was a Sundance hit, but it was a really good movie. And Natasha Lyonne had done Slums of Beverly Hills. Michael Rappaport had done a load of stuff. Carrie Elway's, of course, Princess Bride, and it all got put together. But the problem was that they cut my budget a lot, and worse than that, they cut the days. And I didn't realize when you're doing humor that you need time to let the scenes. This is something I learned kind of doing the movie. I wish I'd known going in. You need time to kind of just let the humor come out of these moments, and the look, that makes the look of something, the play over, do rehearsal. And I had 20 days, and when you have 20 days, and that's, you can do 20 days when it's, there used to be a period in Sundance where like every Sundance there'd be like a movie about a family that go to celebrate a holiday, Christmas, Thanksgiving, and there's two of them are upset with each other, and the mother doesn't want to admit, but she's dying of cancer, and this will be their last, all that shit. That's basically like one house and a bunch of people around a table, and you could do that in 20 days easy, 10 days. But for people that haven't seen comic book villains, there's, we chucked a truck into a lake. There was a fire. There's a fight with the nail guns, and every single thing every single big scene wasn't it for the day. There was always that. Plus, we've got 4 pages of dialogue to get through.
Wow.
So you never have the time to focus on it. But you know what? It isn't the worst independent movie ever made. So I will. It's a movie that I kind of become proud of now because it's better than it should be for the amount of time we had, the amount of money we had. It's interesting though that someone was telling me that when the movie came out among comic book fans, they didn't really see it as a, Archie, named after Archie Goodwin, the young hero.
I was going to bring that up too.
He says at the end, I still read comics, I still like comics, but I'm living a life now, and a lot of, I guess, this comic book store owner and his clique of fans thought it was a huge betrayal on my part that this movie was even made. That I just did not like comic book fans, which is not true.
I didn't take that.
No, but you're clearly a more well-versed fellow, so you know. And it was a different time. I mean, bear in mind also that comics now, it's much easier to be a well-rounded person and have one of the things you like be comics, because comics are everywhere. Comics and comic films, comics.
True.
Back then, it was a little bit sort of insular, and people get protective of their little insular cave if it's under attack, you know. So that was unfortunately how it was perceived by some people. I wish it had a tiny little cinematic release, but it just didn't quite get the attention it should have, you know. And Lionsgate kind of, you know, put it together. The one thing I'm also pissed at, when I went to Lionsgate to look at their DVD cover, and it's just, and the girl, the designer, she says, "Well, I warn you," and she thought this was funny. She says, "I warn you, I was designing for 20th Century Fox, and I designed for David Fincher's movies, and he said he wanted to blind me so that he could never do this to anyone else." And I was like, "Are you proud of that? Why are you telling me that?" So I went. And I had this idea of a cover where it was like a comic book page, and some of it was like drawn with, you know, like dots back in the day, hot press printing, and some of it was photograph, and it was all sort of, you know, interesting montage of all the characters. And I saw that cover, and then I read an article later that for DVDs, what they and video covers too. If there's a movie that's kind of sort of a bit like it, and it has a cover, they'll just rip that cover off, because people in their minds, people buy what they can kind of subliminally remember in their heads.
True.
So if you look at that cover and you look at Usual Suspects, it's the same cover with a knife you know, and it was a tiny knife. I said, "Can you at least make the knife bigger?" Like, that's Usual Suspects. That's the same layout.
Yeah, that is true. I didn't even snap to that.
And there's even anyway. So that didn't go well. I was a bit upset by that. And anyway, so it made a profit though for Lionsgate. They made money on it. I wish in hindsight now, I'm probably too old to direct again. I don't know. But I kind of regret not trying harder. The thing is that once you do a movie, a low budget movie, and it comes out and people kind of like it, but it doesn't really get much attention, you put so much energy in that you just feel spent afterwards.
Yeah.
And so I was busy, you know, writing film scripts. I've written quite a few for the studios. And in my mind, I was always going to try and direct something later, but that just became less and less urgent for me. And I, you know, drifted away from that. And in hindsight, I guess I should have stuck at it. But there you go. You know, coulda, woulda, shoulda.
I mean, technically, there's people doing reboots right now. I mean, if you want to go watch this, go to Tubi. It's on there. You can watch it for free. It's an awesome film. It like I said, it was ahead of its time. The cast was great. I love the story, the twist at the end that we're talking about. I like that part of it because it's kind of true to a certain extent, that you do want to get out, and you don't want to, the way you presented it without giving spoilers, you don't want to be that person that, like the original collector who passed away.
Yes,
He had this big collection. It wasn't just comics, it was additional items, and he just passed away. Never left town, still lived at home. But the whole premise of it, I loved what you did with that. That's the best part.
The other thing I will say is that the couple, not necessarily exactly like it, but the couple were based on a couple that I knew in LA.
Oh wow!
But Raymond, what the Donald Logue character, was just sort of bits of people I've met in my life, and but because I don't know, this one, the guy where I used to shop, it wasn't based on him, but he was so convinced that I had taken his life and was mocking him that he never spoke to me again.
Oh wow!
And yeah, so you know, which is a shame. I actually quite like the guy, but you know, I couldn't convince him otherwise.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
people
definitely gonna have to find time in my day to watch it. I wasn't aware that you had done this movie until Raymond sent me the link on it, and actually, a lot of your movie work I wasn't familiar with. Like, I didn't know that you had written the screenplay on League of Extraordinary Gentlemen until I started getting ready for this interview. So yeah, I'm gonna have to go back and see other of your work, James.
Well, there's other. What else? I mean, I wrote Hot Wheels. I wrote a draft of Akira, or a couple of drafts back in the day. This was back. I would have been. I'm glad it didn't get made. I would have been crucified. It was. It was back when you. And it's funny because one of the executives was Asian, but it was back when if you adapted an Asian movie, you recut, you made it all white people, or not white people, but at least but Americans or British.
Yeah.
You know, you didn't like The Ring, that you know, and some of those horror movies that they've done versions of. So it was all set in like Neo Chicago, and and then also it was actually at the time going to be directed by the director of League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. And one of the problems with League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, even the finished, even the good version that I had originally written. So the backstory of that is I originally wrote this version that I remain very proud of, and everybody that has read it is shocked by how much better it is. And then 9/11 happened, and Fox was like, "Well, we can't make this movie because you know there could be another terrorist attack next week." At the time that 9/11 happened, you didn't know if a terrorist attack was going to happen next week, and there had been that Saran gas attack in Japan prior to this, so they were worried. You know, and some of the elements in the script I had, they were worried. You know, they would be and they couldn't release the movie because it was in bad taste and blah blah blah. But by then, with the original script, Connery was on board. So if Connery's going to make a movie, it's going to get made. Or you know, back then he was a big deal. So suddenly, the movie's being rewritten by almost committee. I mean, I'm writing it, but there's so many producers come out of the woodwork, and then the director Steve Norrington, and he was a good guy to me. I've got to say, but there were two things I noticed about him that were problematic. One was he once told me how, because I was talking about the Coen brothers at the time, and I said how like they get these like Oscar-winning costume designers and DPs and all this stuff to all work for less money, so the movie can get made. But they have so much fun on the movie that it's worth it, and they feel they're all like a family working on this thing together. And his opinion was, no, that's not what I think. I subscribe to James Cameron's view on making movies. He says that you should rule a set with fear, and everybody should be afraid of you.
Wow.
So he was trying to instill that, and he didn't really succeed to any extent, except Connery hated him. They immediately got into it. And then the other thing was he wanted it to be his movie. So he didn't want to look at I don't think he read the comic. I don't think he looked at the comic.
Wow.
So that everything was his conception. But I remember, you know, in the lead film, how underdeveloped the league headquarters was, when it was so amazingly detailed in the comic book. And I said to him, and it was a mistake because he kind of got a bit nervous about it all afterwards. I was like, "Where's all the stuff? You know, why is it like this?" So So I'm not sure I'm going with this anecdote, except to slag off the director, which is a little mean.
But no, it's Hollywood. But that's Hollywood though. That's the problem and I feel
Yeah,
that's why sometimes we get these bad movies, is because we feel that we get these producers or directors who want their, point of view of it, where, like you said, they didn't read the comics, or they don't have the love for that IP. But when you have people like, say, Kevin Smith, or someone who loved the IP, like perfect example, Stargirl. We'll go into Stargirl with that. Jeff
yeah.
Johns. Jeff Johns was involved, and Jeff Johns, you working with him on that. I mean, how was that? I mean, that to me, I loved Stargirl. I loved the way it was done, the
Well,
special effects and everything.
well, Jeff was very because I helped Jeff get in the comics years back,
Wow.
and I had handed the cosmic staff, metaphorically speaking, to Courtney Whitmore from Jack.
Yeah.
He really wanted me involved, and I really took a shine to TV in that, the first year I was a writer producer, and then the way that you go up each season, you get promoted. So you
Yeah.
go from producer to supervising producer, and then you're a co-executive producer, and then you're an exec producer. Exec producers tend to be more the ones that kind of got the thing going, and they're the one but co-exec is a nice rank. So I was a producer, and then for a lot of just like weird coincidental reasons, the writers who should have been on the set, they weren't. So I ended up staying on the set and doing really the job of like a co-exec or something. So
Oh, wow.
Jeff was kind enough to coerce or convince Warner Brothers to bump my credit up to a co-exec, and I didn't have to do the supervisory one in between. And then I was on the set a lot. Like,
Wow.
I was there when Jeff wasn't there, and we were sort of, we had offices next to each other in Atlanta, and it was a blast. But as a result, he and I, we just have this shorthand. We've always had it, coming up with story, and often when we were in the writers' room with other writers, they would tell us we had to kind of like explain what we were talking about, and why this had to happen, and that, I would go, well, blah blah blah, and then da da da, and, we would immediately get it, and they're like, what, why, what? So working with Jeff, and Jeff, obviously, Courtney is the name of his dead sister, as
Yeah.
all that. So I mean, getting the series right was important, and he really, we really worked hard to bring as much of the DC universe into it without kind of compromising it in a way that a producer or a writer might do if they weren't totally into it. For every Jeff Johns out there, there's a producer that has been given a pile of comics a week before he pitches, and he's the first time he's reading stuff, and he has no idea, or he doesn't care. I mean, there's a lot of writers in Hollywood that it's just a gig. They just want to make money. They don't really care about the work.
Yeah, that's
So, unfortunately, and there are a lot that are true artists too. I'm not slagging everybody off.
Stargirl was a great series. It's a shame that whole stuff with the CW and Warner Brothers was going on at that time, because I would have loved to have seen the Shade spinoff.
The ideas we had for the next seasons would make you weep if we told you. We were even trying to get it. We even had plans to do an Infinity Inc. series with the Shade. But, if you remember at the end, and we had what were they called? What was that? The characters we had. We introduced Jade and
Obsidian,
Danny Hawkins, and it was going to be the Shade, who did not want to be a father figure or a protector of kids, is dumped with this job, and is him slowly kind of rising to the occasion.
Wow.
So that would have been a second series that we would have been doing, but it wasn't. It didn't happen, and it never will, unfortunately.
Yeah. That's too bad.
Yeah, I mean, it was great. I mean, I loved. Okay, so for me, I never read Starman, never read Stargirl, and when I
You
started
need
watching
to.
this show, yeah, but that's the thing. When I started watching this, it made me go look for the comics and graphic novels to get more details so I can know who these characters were. It's kind of like Guardians of the Galaxy. This
Yes.
made me care for these characters and to find out more about these characters because it was interesting. And when I started picking up some of these issues when I could find them, and I was like, "Oh, I love the artwork and I love the story." And I was like, "Wow, like how did I not know about this?" Because I was too caught up in Wolverine and Superman that I oversaw these titles. And I was
Right.
kind of like, "Wow, this made me want to go and find about these characters."
Good. Good. Well, I mean, so we've had one more fan. That's good.
If we could go back to Starman for a sec, James, I just wanted to ask. So, since, like I said, I was rereading this, I noticed when David Goyer got onto the book with you, and I just want to ask, could you talk about how did David join you on the book? And I was looking at his IMDb, and it looks like I think maybe just Blade is what he had done at that time. So, how did he go from that
No,
to
no,
comic
Blake.
writer?
No, no, Blake. Well, no. David Goyer was a pretty successful. I mean, he'd done a lot. He'd written some scripts. Not all of them were that good, to be
Okay.
honest. But they got made, and that's important.
Yeah.
And he was also doing a lot of TV stuff. Some of it does.
Oh,
I
okay.
mean, you develop stuff, and then it doesn't get made, or it gets cancelled. I mean, so what happened was I had been writing a book called Firearm for Malibu, which is a book I remain very proud of, and for the Ultraverse. And he had liked the dialogue, and he said, "Look, I'm doing a series called." Was it called Sleepwalker? It might have been called Sleepwalkers. Funnily enough, because I mentioned the name earlier, the Sleepwalker name,
Mhm.
and it was with Brian. I don't remember his name. He played Pike in the movies in a wheelchair. It goes Star Trek. He played Star Trek's in the
Oh,
movies
okay, okay.
with Chris Pine. Those ones.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
You're.
yeah.
Bruce Greenwood. That's it.
Oh,
And
okay.
it was a thing with like dream worlds and it was a bit like if you cross like time tunnel and quantum leap and you
Oh,
put it into
Okay.
people's dreams, and it was a cool
Mhm.
idea. So he was busy filming that. Was it? I think he'd made the pilot and he was doing some of it, and then the series got cancelled after half a year. But I mean, he has a track record, before he went on to do other stuff. So he was going to involve me in that series, and we stayed friends. And I wrote a movie with him that sold for quite a lot of money. It never got made. It was a fantasy film. And then what happened? And then while we were writing that, I was a bit personal, but I was going through my first divorce, and I was a bit depressed. So I was finding it hard to bring my full creative skills to the table, even writing Starman. And so I said, "Hey, do you want to write it with me for a while?" And he really did kind of keep me energized. And then we wrote JSA together. And then I don't want to go into it, but we had a falling out, and we've never been friends since. And it's a shame because I've always felt kindly towards the guy.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, that is a
so,
shame.
so that was David Goyer. If you looked at IMDb, actually no, you wouldn't. It might no, it wouldn't come up because some of the things that don't get made. But he's always been a very successful guy.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, because I was trying to put together a timeline of when Starman, when you were on it, and when he came on, what was he working on? But the other thing I was curious about, like, how is it co-writing something that's your creation? You're building this world, you're building Opal and creating Jack and all of this, and now to have someone else contributing to that world, what is that like?
Well, I mean, to be honest about David Goyer, he had good ideas. So
Okay.
when you work, unless you're an egotistical idiot that it has to be my idea, otherwise it doesn't count, and those people sometimes they're successful, but more often I don't think they are. Um, if he was bringing good ideas to the table, um, who am I to say no? So it was a good relationship. I'm still to this day I'm sad that we're not friends.
Mhm.
And what the other interesting thing you might just in terms of how things happen, if you notice with Starman, we wrote some issues together, and then there was a break where I wrote Ground Guignol, and then at the end of Ground
Mhm.
Guignol, he came back and wrote some more. That isn't
Yeah.
how it happened. The way it happened was that we wrote the first stuff, the stuff in space, and then from
Mhm.
space he was going to go and encounter his brother, and it made more sense to have it later. So that those stories where he meets his brother in 1950s,
Mhm.
1952 or 51, that should have happened earlier, and that's why it looks like he came back and did more. But he actually worked together for a chunk of it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I thought about that because when you finished your story after the space story, it seemed like that was the end. Like it seemed like a perfect ending. And then yeah, there were a few other stories in 51 and stuff like that. But then you wrapped it up great with him passing off the rod and him
Yeah,
saying goodbye to
I'm very
Opal
proud
and
of how that series ended. You know, it
yeah,
was
yeah.
it's you know, it's interesting when you live with work, you don't always see how good it is
Mhm.
until you look back on it years later, and it's really only now I'm doing these conventions or people are coming up to me with Starman and talking about how much the book's meant to them that I
Yeah.
realize I actually did a pretty good job. I'm very proud. In hindsight, I'm quite proud of what I've done.
Well, it's
Yep.
amazing. One thing I was curious about too, around that time, there's this there's this thought that the 90s in comics was crap. But when I was looking at the timeline, I mean, there was a bunch of the Vertigo titles going on at that time. And then Starman comes about, and that was such a great title. So at that time, are you looking at the industry and are you trying to do something different than say what's happening at Image, or do
I,
you just
I
have your story to tell?
Well, with Starman, I was definitely trying to capture the time that I grew up. But by the time I was doing Starman, I think Vertigo had just started, and it was starting to get more and more. I mean, there were some great Vertigo books, absolutely,
Mhm.
but there are some that are so like just poncy, vanish up their own backsides. They're just like so just annoying, annoys me. My teeth are gritting, and I stress some were brilliant, and it was kind of like the 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 comics that I grew up with, the ones I loved when I was a teenager. You know, Batman Year One, Swamp Thing. You know, Miracle Marvel Man, as it was known. Love and Rockets. Love and Rockets is a bit more mature, but you're right. That's my dog down there. It's a bit of noise. Um, uh, there was that sort of maturity, but also it was still a comic book.
Mhm.
And you had to be clever about how you showed certain things, you know. And then with Vertigo, it just became you could show and do anything. And from I remember in the Vertigo offices, there was this feeling that with some of them that like they were above the scum that were reading Superman and Wolverine, and it sort of irked me. And I wanted to do a book that reminded me of the kind of stuff that I enjoyed, which was a comic book, but it had enough maturity that I didn't feel I was being written down to or talked down to, but also um, had had the fun of a comic, and it wasn't
Mhm.
just this dark, depressing, you know, pretentious thing.
Yeah.
So that was kind of what I was trying to pull off at the time, you know. And
Okay.
people would other people. I remember a bit after me, but when Grant Morrison was, oh, he had a falling out with Mark Millar, didn't he? Talking of that. But when they did Aztec together, that was definitely them trying to do like a fun comic that was also actually. I mean, I've always loved Morrison's writing, and even his Justice League. I mean, that was like a classic example of like a fun comic that was also cool and had elements that were for people that enjoyed to think more about stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway,
True.
there you go.
So, if you can talk to us about your upcoming comic that just dropped, that's on issue. What was it? Answer 3 or 4? I think it's 3.
Three's about to come out, right?
Yeah,
Adventures of
yeah.
Luminen.
Is it? No, is it about to come out? I thought it was just out with the holidays and everything else. I haven't been to a comic store in a couple of weeks, But I have my copy. My comps arrived, so I assume they're in the store. But sometimes the comps get printed pretty early.
Yeah.
There's one of Lumen N. Yes, there's eventually Lumen N. There's one issue to come. And then, you know, the ones prior to that were Patra with Scott Collins. Welcome to the Maynard with Jay Bone, which won a Ringo Award. I was very proud of that, I can tell you.
Yeah.
I've got that one right here.
Oh, there we go.
I've got the Chris Somney cover. So.
It's a beautiful cover. Have you read it, though?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then Los Monstros, which I love, with Jesus Marino. Mm-hmm. And, you know, we have more to come with all of these books. Mm-hmm. And nice. It's me, you know, really doing all those stories that I've had in my head for ages and have never had a chance to tell, you know, and you know, I think especially like Los Monstros, actually all of them really, Lumen Inn and you know, Welcome to the Maynard, a magical hotel. I mean, they're all they have potential. The stories just keep in my head. They just keep coming and keep coming. Los Monstros, I have like 5. I mean, Jesus is currently doing a Conan 4-part story, but their plan is for him to come back and do Los Monstros right afterwards, and he's already done nice. 7 pages. Like he's, you know, and Jay Bone has laid out basically the whole of the sort of Welcome to the Maynard special / annual that would then carry us into the next arc, which is a magical locker room mystery. So, I mean, all these things are things I'm very excited about, and anyone watching this that's intrigued by me blabbering on and saying a lot of crap. Los Monstros, the trade will be out in January, and then I'm not sure when. I guess judging just by how timetables work, I would say probably around about April will be the Adventures of Lumen N. But these are also all still in stores. Well, some of them actually. Los Monstros, they messed up the what's the word? The solicitation. So I don't know that issue 2 it was actually got it into like the previous catalogs and stuff. So it's a pretty rare book.
Yeah, so something must have happened because I try to pick up everything I see with your name on it, and that one just completely was off my radar. I hadn't even heard of it.
Did you find them eventually, or you still haven't read it yet?
I haven't read it yet.
Okay, well, you should.
I need to find it. I know. And then Patra, I just didn't pick up because I don't like spooky stuff. So
it's not spooky. It's not okay. So it isn't spooky. It's this young girl that's in this situation, but there's more to it. You've got to trust me. If you try it, have you read Patra, Raymond, or not? Honestly,
no. I haven't had a chance to read that one either. I was
guys.
I saw there was a severed head, so that's why I didn't pick it up.
Wait, oh, no, stop. There's so much more to it that you just got to trust me. It's a fun book.
I'll trust you.
And then the other thing I should definitely say, there's two more things that are in the offing. One is that I'm doing a Kickstarter with Jeff Johnson.
Oh, nice.
For a series called Rogue Kingdom. And it is absolutely fantastic. If you get on Kickstarter, we're doing it one issue at a time, but when you we'll be launching the 3rd one soon. The second one, you can still get on for the second one and order the back issues. And then the 3rd one, so it's something you can get, and the art is amazing and the story is fantastic.
Oh, nice.
I would definitely urge you guys to check that out. And then the other thing is, and I've kind of tied it into the world of Rogue's Kingdom, although it takes place a few hundred years earlier, but it's actually an independent. I've written my first novel. Well, in the past, I wrote my first novel, which I'm going to be kickstartering it too.
Okay.
Which is a locked castle room mystery. It's in a sort of world of science fantasy with, you know, mythical creatures and everything else, and a detective that has to solve this crime. It's really, I mean, people that know me know I do not brag about my work, but this is fantastic writing. It is a fantastic book. And then Jeff Johnson's doing a wraparound cover will look like a 1970s kind of cool science fantasy cover, and it's going to be fantastic. So that will be a Kickstarter that you should look out for when it comes. And quite
Okay.
honestly, the book is only going to be about, you know, $10 or whatever a paperback costs. So it's not like it's going to break your bank.
Okay.
Oh,
And
nice.
then but I was so excited by the character, the like science fantasy. Now, imagine a world like King's Landing, you know, Game of
Mm-hmm.
Thrones, but where there's
Oh.
there's mysteries to solve, and there's mythical creatures and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so the main characters are this sort of Sherlock Holmes like character called Daramont Drake, and then his partner is this female kind of cool killing machine called Natalie, and they bicker and they squabble and everything else. So if you know Nick and Nora Charles, The Thin Man, they're all black and white crime movies based on Dashiell Hammett book.
Mm-hmm.
Mix that with Sherlock Holmes and like Game of Thrones or Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser, if you know those
Oh.
characters.
Okay.
I know I'm getting a bit obscure here, but I'm so inspired by them that I've since written 3 more novellas and another novel, and
Okay.
I've spun off a supporting character that I fell in love with from the second novel. I've already begun writing short stories with him. So
Dang.
there's a whole sort of prose world that will be coming from James Robinson in 2026 that I hope
Okay.
people who have enjoyed my work will take that leap and enter that prose world with me.
Definitely.
Yeah, we'll
And
definitely
where
promote
can
that here.
people keep up with you, James? Do you have
Well,
social
very
media
good
or a
question. That's
newsletter?
an
Or...
excellent question. I'm actually looking to really get out more. I'm on Instagram, so please, anybody that wants to follow me on Instagram, please do. And I am on Threads? Yeah, I'm on Threads, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
on what's the other one? Blue Sky.
Blue Sky.
But
Yeah.
I haven't really found them very like Threads is like just people talking a lot of crap they just talk, you know, about stuff, and most of it sounds made up too. And then Blue Sky's cool, but I don't know really who's on it very much. I mean, some creative people. Twitter
Mm-hmm.
is just mean, so I stay out of the
Yeah.
way with that. And Facebook is like,
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Exactly.
tell you, I used to be on Facebook. I'll tell you this story because you can thank Marvin Gaye for me getting off Facebook. And the
Okay.
reason was that I was just trying to write something interesting, you know, a little bit of conversation. And if you remember the Winter Soldier, Captain America, the movie Winter
Oh,
Soldier,
yeah.
when he's running around the big pool in Washington D.C.
Oh
and he's
yeah.
passing them, and then they're sitting and talking at the end. And Sam Wilson says to him, "Hey man, if you want to learn all about the world and what's happened since you went to sleep, just listen to Marvin Gaye's Trouble Man."
Mm-hmm.
Now, anybody that actually knows Marvin Gaye knows that Trouble Man was him doing a soundtrack for a crime movie. There's only one or two songs on it. Everything else is all instrumental because, you know, Isaac Hayes got the Oscar for Shaft. So everybody Isaac Hayes, not Isaac Hayes, Curtis Mayfield. They were all doing soundtracks to blaxploitation movies. Curtis Mayfield did Superfly. Marvin Gaye did Trouble Man. And I was just thinking to myself, I'm pretty sure that in the original script, Sam Wilson said, if you want to know what's happened in the world since then, What's Going On by Marvin Gaye. That is absolutely an example of the world, how things have changed, what's going on, etc., etc. And because, you know, movie clearance rights and stuff like that are so weird, I was just saying, I wonder if they couldn't use the title "What's Going On" by Marvin Gaye for some legal reason. So they thought, well, the Trouble Man sounds cool. We'll use that one instead. And I prefaced this as an idle thought, and so many people kind of got involved in talking about it. But talking about it, you know how with comic book fans at times, or movie fans, the Snyder guys, you know, who don't
Mm-hmm.
like the other one and all of that. They just get almost angry that you dare to say anything wrong with it.
Yeah.
So there were people that were like mansplaining why I was wrong, and who clearly didn't know. Some of them clearly didn't know who Marvin Gaye was. They certainly
Wow.
didn't. They certainly didn't know that Marvin Gaye did a. Some of them were talking about the single, what's going on, not the album, because they didn't know there was an album. You know, there were so many people that just didn't know
Wow.
shit, but they felt they wanted to talk and have an opinion. And I was like, do I
Oh.
want to be hanging out with all these people that just want to talk? They don't sort of think about what they're saying. So that got me on Facebook. Long story short.
Yeah.
But I am going to be, as I say, launching a website, and on Instagram there'll be a notification, and then
Okay.
also what is it called? The other one that people do where you get emails in the
Substack?
Substack. I think I'm going to do a Substack too, because I get the Ed Brubaker one and the Jeff Lemire one and a couple of others, and just getting those little updates are nice. So
Yeah.
if you get on Instagram and you get on my Facebook, not my Facebook, my website when it's launched, you'll get a lot of information of upcoming stuff and some cool stuff on the website. I've got lots of things on the website that'll make it more than just a look. This is what I'm doing this week thing.
Yeah.
And then, you know, if you sign up, you'll be getting Substacks and me with talking a lot of crap like I have for the last hour and
Yeah.
11 minutes.
And on your website, make sure you have some kind of newsletter sign up too. That way, just in case Substack changes or goes away.
Yes, absolutely. First thing. I have to begin making dinner.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
that's why we're cutting it there.
Actually,
Like, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, do you have a few more minutes, James? I have two friends who introduced me to Starman, and when they found out I was gonna be talking to you, they asked if I could ask their questions.
Please, I can't wait to hear them.
Okay, there's only two.
No.
First one is, what was your inspiration for the generational real life struggles of Jack with his dad, as well as becoming Starman? In the end, how close Jack and his dad became, and how Jack being Starman was important to their relationship.
That's one question.
Yeah,
that's a big. Okay, so the idea.
I guess basically, what was your inspiration for their relationship?
The generational. My father died when I was 2, and I had a pretty odd relationship with my mother. It wasn't a very good relationship. So some of it was speculative in terms of what, but some of it is, you know, parent to child. You know, a lot of it carried over. I always knew going in that Jack would never say "I love you" to his father. Even at the end, he doesn't get to say it. He dies before he can say it. And that was always in intention. I knew that I was always going to kill Ted Knight because they killed off a few of the characters. One of the miniseries that they did, what was it? I forget what Countdown or one of them. They killed off like some of the Justice Society. They're the characters that have dinner. They're all the characters that have dinner with Jack in that Talking with David, where they all sit down. Because I just felt the way they killed them off was so lousy, and I knew that at some point Ted Knight was going to get killed off, and I just wanted him to go out like a Viking, you know, as a hero, and not, you know, snuffed in some insignificant way because he was an old man.
Yeah.
And then the generational stuff, like my mother was a good deal older than me. She had me late in life, so I was aware of that. How you kind of dismiss what your parents say at times because you think, well, they don't know, they're not young, you know. And then you realize well, they were young and they did get it at some point.
Yeah.
And it was that slow involvement. I mean, one of the things I remember loving when I was writing Starman, because that scene wrote itself, but when Jack sees a young version of his father and it just makes him proud, you know, those things where kids see their parents like with a different light and they realize, you know, especially like I think as you get older and maybe you have kids or you're busy paying the rent and you realize how much sacrifice your parents did, which at the time when you're young you don't think that, you know.
Yeah.
So that was all very important to me. Sorry, what was the rest of the question? It went all over the place.
No, that was pretty much it. Just asking what your inspiration was
What was that question's what's the name of the guy that or girl that asked?
So you might have heard of a Comic Geek Speak, the podcast.
Comic Geek Speak. No, I'm afraid I haven't.
One of the hosts, his name is Shane, and
Shane?
listening to that, Shane, and listening to that podcast years and years ago, they talked about what big fans they were of your work, and so that's what got me reading it, because I didn't read it when it was being published, but I read it a few years later.
Are you friends with Shane?
Yeah, now I'm friends with the Comic Geek Speak guys. I sponsor the podcast sometimes through my show and
Oh
stuff
well,
like that.
please give Shane my regards and tell him he's named after one of my favorite westerns.
All right. And then the other one on the show is Peter. So his question just has to do with the Golden Age. So he goes, the Golden Age could fit very well within DC continuity. Did you ever see any opportunity to revisit that story or show consequences of it during flashbacks in Starman or elsewhere?
Well, I kind of think I did. Like, as far as when I wrote, the thing about the Golden Age was when I wrote it and pitched it, it was in continuity. It was going to be in continuity, and for reasons that it's too long to explain. But it ended up being an Elseworld. But it was for such a dumb reason, and that I decided, as far as I'm concerned, it happened. And Starman is the continuation of that. So I've always kind of held. I mean, the way that Ted Knight is going crazy with guilt because of the atom bomb and all of that, and then I took that with me into Starman. And I've noticed also that there've been other writers that have taken little bits and pieces of it. And just sort of half reference things in books, which is nice. I think at this point where there's been so much rewritten in terms of continuity from this year or that year or this reboot or whatnot, it's so hard to tell what's in continuity and what isn't now that I think it just is in continuity as much as pretty much. Well, that's Shane and Paul,
and then this one is Peter.
Oh, Peter. Sorry, Peter. Yeah, well, please give both gentlemen my regards.
And thank you so much for taking that extra time, James.
No, not at all. It's good.
Like Jack told Diane in Starman, your writing has given me such joy over the years. So thank you so much.
Oh, well, that's lovely. Thank you very much. Thank you. And there's some other things I can't talk about now that might be coming up. If they do, please get me back on and we can talk more about stuff.
Oh,
okay?
yes, definitely, for sure. I would love that. All right,
Thank you, guys. I gotta.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Have a good one.
Cheers.